This NFL Week 14 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a new sportsbook available in 45 states. Download Rebet in the App Store and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to ground downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, what as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NFL Week 14 Sunday games on the horizon here as we inch ever so closer to the playoffs. I can't believe I'm saying that, but still a lot to be determined here in the NFL season. Of course, we'll give you our Week 14 Sunday game player props for this week. 3 player props each for myself and, of course, Chris. We'll get into our touchdown scores, honorable mentions as well, and then we'll wrap it up with best bets and an Underdog Fantasy entry here for Week 14. But, of course, joining me here to help me break everything down for the player props for Week 14, I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Happy Friday, happy Friday. Excited to talk about some football, even though we have the condensed menu of selection choices, with so many teams having a bye this week, but always trying to attack the market, trying to find some cash, let's get into it for week 14.
Yeah, week 14 should be a lot of fun here for the schedule. We got some intriguing matchups here to kick off NFL week 14. We had a great one last night on Thursday Night Football between the Lions and the Packers. We talked about it, Chris. This might or was going to be a higher scoring game, but especially with these two prolific offenses. And it was a good one, 34-31 victory for the Detroit Lions. The Packers do get the cover, plus 3.5. There were 4s out there as well. The game does fly over the total, more so due to the fact that it was a very high-scoring second half in that game. As far as our player props win, I went 2-1. Did win the best bet there with David Montgomery. I know you went 2-1 as well, Chris, but I think that, and we were talking offline briefly, and I think this is the second time this season where I've taken a wide receiver prop and they didn't record a single catch, didn't record a single yard. None of that happened here for Mr. Jaden Reed. And the last one I remember was Courtland Sutton in that game against the Saints back on, I don't know which week it was, but since then, Courtland Sutton has just been a man on fire. So I think that may just happen with Jaden Reed. So that just means I'll probably have to bet on him next week for him to get up and over his number after getting only targeted once in this game for the Green Bay Packers. But it was a fun one. Some I don't want to call it questionable decisions by Dan Campbell, but I would say definitely gutsy and ballsy, I think, are the words there for Dan Campbell. But I think that's been a theme for him throughout his tenure as the head coach of the Detroit Lions there. But what was your assessment of the game last night? And then we'll get into our player props here for the Sunday games.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, I think gutsy, questionable, I think they're all synonyms, I think, it just depends on if it works or not, right? Because if it doesn't work, then, he's looked at as, making questionable calls. But I definitely thought that was a questionable call, running that ball, especially with the trip. Of course, you don't know that, your quarterback's going to trip, handing the ball off, but those type of things happen all the time. I think the biggest takeaway for me, Munaf, is Detroit is really good at football. Like you talked about yesterday. Well, not yesterday, on Wednesday when we did the Propcast. We both talked about it just briefly because we're not talking about size, but we talked about how good Matt LaFleur had been in his career as a dog. And we saw it again. Like the Packers are not, a second-tier team. They're an elite team as well. So to be able to handle your business week in and week out, this is what, 11 straight wins now? Are they odds-on Super Bowl favorites? Is what I think of. I mean, like, just the ability to be able to win. You got to win ugly games. You got to win cute games. You got to be able to blow teams out. You got to be able to come back at certain times because you're not going to start the game. Like, there's so much inconsistency. So to win it, to win this many games in a row, it definitely feels like, if I'm a Detroit Lions fan, man, I'm probably still yelling and screaming and, super happy for the future. It's just their ability to be able to get the job done. We talked about Jared Goff, highlighted him, passing touchdowns. It feels like you don't even need to cap it anymore. You just take him to throw two no matter who he plays against. Good defense, bad defense, you just take it. But, that offensive line, we talked about it at the beginning of the season. One of the better offensive lines in the NFL. And that's why you can turn around, hand that football off in that moment. So even with the defensive deficiencies, specifically due to injuries, long-term and short-term, they just continue to find a way, covering the spread or not. So hats off to Detroit. They look like a pretty unstoppable machine, scoring 30 points per game, leading the team, leading the league in scoring offense throughout the season. So that was my biggest takeaway. What about yours?
Yeah, I think I tweeted this out after the game, and it was, I think, late in that third quarter where they went for it with Jahmyr Gibbs on that 4th and 1 on their own 30, and they didn't get it. And then again with the 4th and short there with David Montgomery and Jared Goff falling and getting the handoff miraculously to David Montgomery to pick up that first down to pretty much win the game for them. I said if those type of decisions could be costly to the Detroit Lions, that if they don't convert on those 4th downs in the playoffs, that could be the difference between them winning a Super Bowl, let alone maybe even getting to the championship. I won't get ahead of, put the cart ahead of the horse here. But them getting to a conference championship and possibly, trying to go to the Super Bowl. I like this Lions team. We've talked about this Lions team a lot. A lot of our player props have come from this Lions team, and I want them to win. I think, I think they are the new America's team, quote unquote. But I think those decisions something that he's really, really gonna have to consider, especially in the playoffs where it's a do or die situation. But during the regular season, you love the aggressiveness that comes from Dan Campbell. But I just hope that in the playoffs is something that doesn't cost them. The difference between winning and losing. But yeah, I think for the game flow, as far as the outside of the Jaden Reed factor, I think we, pretty much nailed the handicap as far as player props went. Talked about David Montgomery. He got up and over his receiving yards. You mentioned Jared Goff's, his touchdowns. We talked about Jameson Williams getting up and over his longest reception at home. So I think we have a pretty good gauge on these props here, at least for the Detroit Lions side, just because we've talked about them a lot here on the Propcast here. So that was my takeaway. And again, congrats to the Lions for at least clinching a playoff spot, and now look like they are well on their way to winning the NFC North Division. All right, before we do get over to our player props here for Sunday, let me just remind everybody to download the SGPN app. It's completely free, and you have easy access to all of our shows, and we'll also have access to our picks page as well. It's all completely free. All you got to do is just download the SGPN app wherever you do get your apps, whether it's on the Google Play Store, it's on the App Store, whatever the case might be. Just do us a favor, download that SGPN app. All right, Chris, let's get into it here. Let's get into our player props here for the Sunday games. I'll let you lead it off. Let's start here with quarterback props and work our way from there. What do you got, my man?
All right, so we have a game this weekend, that's going to be played between the Carolina Panthers and the Philadelphia Eagles. We couldn't see two teams going in the more opposite direction. And granted, Carolina has looked, I guess, a little bit better. I give them a little bit of credit over the last few weeks, kind of keeping a couple of those games competitive. They're not quite the Washington Wizards of the modern day NBA, but they're not far away. So it's the game we're gonna go to, and we're looking at Jalen Hurts. Just honestly thinking that he won't have to do as much, right? I'm taking his under his pass attempts specifically. The number comes in at 25.5. One of the things that attracted me to this bet was the price. So you can get a plus 100 right now. Shop around. You can get the 26.5 super juiced on a couple books as well. So whatever you feel comfortable with. But I'm looking at Jalen Hurts. And in these games, he's not passing the ball that much. We know what Saquon does for this team, and I think that there's a lot of correlation between the two. Eagles, 12.5-point favorites. I see them 13 on a few books as well. Carolina Panthers, the worst rush defense in the NFL, allowing 166 yards per game. Eagles run the ball. We know that. Number one rushing offense in the league, 190 yards per game on the ground. And Panthers pass rush improved slightly in recent weeks. 9 sacks in their last 2 games. This could incentivize the Eagles to want to run the ball a little bit more as well. Jalen Hurts hasn't attempted more than 30 passes in over 2 months. We cashed on this earlier this season, and that just goes back to them being able to run the ball, turn around, hand the thing off to Saquon, him running the ball himself as well. So I look at the numbers just to put some numbers with it as well. Hurts threw the ball against Baltimore 19 times last week. That was one of my losses. I got smoked last week, FYI. We didn't talk about recapping, but I got smoked last week because I liked that game against Baltimore so much last week. Hurts threw the ball 19 times. Remember his pass attempts, I think, were set at 28.5, and I told you I liked the over because he was going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. No, he didn't. They still hand the ball off to Saquon. You don't have to pass the ball. So if you don't have to do it against them, why would you have to pass the ball against Carolina? 2 weeks ago, we go back against the Rams on the road, passed the ball 22 times. He does have a game in here against the Commanders where he did pass it 28 times. But if I go back 5 weeks in a row before that game, he's under this number every single game, So he's only hit the number 3 of the last 10 games, 1 of the last 5 games. And if we're being super specific, he's only hit the number 1 of his last 8 games as well. So I love Jalen Hurts to just hand the ball off. No need to have to complete a bunch of passes or even throw a bunch of passes in this spot. We'll start off with Jalen Hurts going under his pass attempts here, 25.5.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense here. Like you mentioned, that they don't really have to have Jalen Hurts air out the football when you have Saquon Barkley in the backfield there. And I think that's what's really been pretty much the driver of this offense this season, with how great Saquon has been this season for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you laid out the numbers there beautifully. I think this was what I was looking at as well for Jalen Hurts. So I'm glad that you are on the under here for him and his passing attempts in this game. And again, with the spread of 12, I think you would expect to see a lot more running in this game with Saquon, and even Kenneth Gainwell has been involved in that running game there as well. And Jalen Hurts is another guy that can, we know that can take off and run with the football there as well. So definitely agree with you on this one. All right, for my first player prop here, and this one thankfully just popped up over on FanDuel right now. I'm looking at Aiden O'Connell going into that Bucks and the Raiders game. Aiden O'Connell to go up and over his pass completions of 21.5 in this game. And, one of the teams that has been struggling this season against the pass has been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you take a look at them this season, they're giving up 275 yards per game through the air. They're also allowing quarterbacks to attempt, or teams, I should say, are throwing the ball 38 times against them thus far this season. And I think that's going to continue here. The injuries, especially in the backfield for the Raiders, have been piling up. I know they brought out Zamir White. Alexander Madison was a limited participant in practice this week. Miradula is a pretty good fill-in guy for a backfield, but I think that in a game where I'm expecting the Raiders to be trailing in this game and having to throw the football, this is a spot where I'm looking at Aiden O'Connell to get up and over his pass completions. The number's at 21.5 right now, and there's only been 3 quarterbacks that have not exceeded this number, which was Jaden Daniels in week 1. We just talked about Jalen Hurts. He only had 18 in week 4. And then Lamar Jackson in week 5 there, 17 of 22. Very efficient game for him in that game. But since then, every quarterback has had at least 22 completions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The last 5 weeks in particular, Chris, 23 completions for Kirk Cousins, 34 for Patrick Mahomes, 25 for Brock Purdy, 22 for DeVito and Drew Lock combined. And then last week, we saw Bryce Young go out there, throw for 26 for 46, 298 yards in that game. So I like Aiden O'Connell in this game to get up and over his completions. You can get this as FanDuel right now. 21.5 is a number here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at it right now, this is a good one. Two of his last 3 games, he's going up and over the number. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, and you mentioned this, is it's just the attempts, right? I'm looking at, how much this Raiders team does pass the football. And the last couple weeks, I'm seeing 43, 40, 41, 46, and 38 pass attempts. So that's what you need, right? You can't get a completion. You can't get completions up and over without the actual pass attempt. So they're passing the ball at a really, really high rate right now, and he should be able to have some success against his Bucs secondary. So I like this one a lot. I think it's a good look.
All right, before we continue our player props here for the Week 14 games, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports, whether it is NBA, NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NASCAR, and much more. You can win up to 1,000x with Underdog streaks. And Underdog is always making it easier to win with profit boosts and gimme picks. And you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to 1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a new social sportsbook available in 45 states. There are plenty of betting opportunities available on Rebet. Easy to use and great for people in states where traditional sportsbook may be restricted. Download Rebet in the App Store and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, that's Rebet. Use that promo code SGPN. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get into our next player props here, man. What do you got?
So took a page out of your book, if we'll talk about honorable mention here because there's a couple guys I like this week. I think it's actually a couple. It's quite a few guys that got really good matchups. So I'm interested to hear if you're betting on one of my honorable mentions. But I like I'm taking a page out of your book. I'm actually going with the receiving prop for a running back, and that is another one of your guys as well. That is Jaylen Warren. Him, up and over. His receiving prop is 17.5. Best number I see available is minus 110 over on BetMGM. So not a lot of juice here. And it's just a hot streak, He's actually really hot right now. Hitting the over in 4 of his last 5 games. This is 80%. Over that span, he's averaged right under 29 receiving yards per game, which is significantly higher, of course, than the 17.5. You look at this matchup that he has against the Cleveland Browns defense, it's pretty solid. But they do allow more receiving yards, a few more receiving yards to the running back position than most other teams. And in a prior game earlier, Warren already recorded 19 receiving yards, so he hit the over in the game that they played earlier this season. And you think about that Cleveland Browns defense, elite pass rush. We know that Myles Garrett is there. He could force Pittsburgh into relying on some quick passes down the field, some checkdowns as well. So I think Warren is set up in a really good spot here. If I know he's splitting snaps, of course, we all know he's splitting snaps with Najee Harris out there in Pittsburgh, but his role is, more prominent to being a pass catcher out of that backfield.
Yep.
And I mentioned it, 29 4 weeks ago against my Washington Commanders, 27 3 weeks ago against the Baltimore Ravens, 19 against Cleveland, so up and over the total as well. And then he's coming off a really big game. 55 against Cincinnati last week. So I think we see some dropbacks. I think we see some quick passes. I think we see some pass rush from the Cleveland Browns side of things. So I'll go Jaylen Warren up and over, to stay hot this week. 17.5 is the receiving yard prop.
Yeah, I like it. Jaylen Warren's been that pass catching back for this team. I know they've got Najee involved in that passing game there as well. But I mean, you just take a look over the last 3 head-to-head meetings against the Cleveland Browns, 66 receiving yards, 16 and 19 in that span. But I think that role is just going to continue to expand for him as the season progresses here for Jaylen Warren. So couldn't talk you off of this one for sure. Jaylen Warren, I know we talked about him a lot last season as well. It seems like he's just picked up right where he left off after returning from injury for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. So definitely love that one. All right, for my running back prop here, Chris, I'm going to that game between the Giants and the Saints, and I'm looking at Alvin Kamara to have a huge week here against a New York Giants taking his rushing yards to go up and over the number of 82.5 in this game. And honestly, it's just really
Honorable
a fade.
mention.
Yeah, look, it's just honestly a fate of how bad this rush defense has been for the New York Giants, and also the fact that there aren't very many weapons left here for this New Orleans Saints team, right? Chris Olave is on the IR. They're also missing Rashid Shaheed. They lost Taysom Hill as well. So now you're going to have to heavily rely on Alvin Kamara in this game. And we take a look at since week 7, really just fading the Giants' rush defense. Saquon went for 176. Najee Harris, 114. Commanders as a running back group, I should say, ran for 114 rushing yards. Chuba Hubbard, a few weeks ago, 28 for 153. Bucky Irving, 12 for 88. And then last week on Thanksgiving Day, Rico Dowdle, 22 rush attempts, 112 rushing yards in that game. And now you have Alvin Kamara coming in, who I think is going to have a huge game here. So with the lack of weapons there for the Saints side on the offense, and also how bad this rush defense has been for the New Orleans Saints, I'll take Alvin Kamara to go up and over the number of 82.5 currently over on DraftKings. Again, definitely shop around for the best number. This number opened around 80.5. It's only on the climb there, but I think that this could be a 100 rushing yard day for sure for Alvin Kamara in this game here, Chris.
Yes, it absolutely can. If he may get to 125, if we're all being honest with ourselves. He has a very good matchup, as you said, and he is also on a depleted team. If I'm just wanting to double check, because like I said, I had this on my short list. I want to see what the best number is for Mr. Alvin Kamara. So I see 79.5 over on ESPN Bet if you want a little juice. But I honestly, Bet365 got a 79.5 as well. I think the 82.5 is also good money. This guy has been extremely consistent this year, and just continues to hit the number. I watched the Giants the other day get absolutely demoralized against the Cowboys on, what was that, on Thanksgiving Day? Yeah, they look terrible. 30th ranked defense. Nothing that we want to do with them at all, except fade them. So love Alvin Kamara. I will be adding this because I love that you agree on it. No need to mention it during the honorable mentions.
Yeah, 79.5 get over at BetMGM, 81.5 at Bet365. And then the other remaining are I should say, at 82.5 for Alvin Kamara. So should be hopefully a big week for Alvin Kamara against the New York Giants. All right, Chris, let's get over to our third round of player props here. What do you got?
All right, so let's go wide receiver. I'm looking at a guy that I haven't bet on too much this season, but I do like him in this spot. I think it's a pretty good spot for him. That player is Mr. Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons. Just some consistency stuff. It feels like while Kirk Cousins, if he's not throwing the ball to the other team, because he can do that a lot in the game, he's looking for Drake London a lot. This dude is been cashing a lot. I'm looking at just receptions and targets. Last 10 games, he's getting 9.6 targets, 6.2 receptions, and that's what I like. I like his reception prop up and over 5.5, and there's a little bit of juice on this. I see it about minus 135 on a few books right now. He's been consistent, big consistent target for the Atlanta Falcons. He's hit the over in 7 of his last 10 games. He's coming off a 9-reception game against the LA Chargers last week. He did only have 3 against the Denver Nuggets, the Denver Broncos the week before. But before that, another really solid week against the New Orleans Saints defense, getting 8 receptions there. So I think, just game flow wise, you got Atlanta that will be in Minnesota. We know what Minnesota's strength is, which is, of course, their Russian defense. That's going to force Kirk Cousins to probably throw a pick too. I did see minus 155 for Kirk Cousins to throw 1 after throwing 4 last week. So like the odds there too, but I think that a lot of targets will continue to go towards Mr. London, So I'll look at him this week to go up and over. 16 targets last week, 7 in the week that he missed 2 weeks ago, but 13 targets the week before that. So when you give me double-digit targets, I got to play the receptions up and over. Not even double digits, but 13, north of 13, I got to take you to get at least 6 catches, So that's my favorite wide receiver prop this week, that at least of what I've done so far, is Mr. Drake London, just thinking that they're going to have to pass the football. Probably won't be too much production out of the backfield, in my opinion, here this week.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off. I mean, last week, 16 targets for Drake London. He's accumulated 36 targets over the last 3 games that he's played in. And I think, a lot of people are talking about the revenge angle this week for Kirk Cousins. I was going to save it for honorable mentions, but I just feel like there's something not right with Kirk Cousins if he's dealing with a injury right now that really hasn't been disclosed yet, whether it's an arm or whether it's an elbow injury right now. I think that was maybe on display in that game against the Chargers, where he threw 4 interceptions last week against that team. And outside of that, I mean, like you mentioned, Drake London has been the consistent player for this offense at the wide receiver position for the Atlanta Falcons there. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to talk you off of this one in this game. All right, for my third player prop here for the Sunday games, I will go over to Parker Washington of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This number is at 31.5, currently over on DraftKings, but let me see if I can find a better number here for Parker Washington. 29.5 over on FanDuel. You can get a 30.5 over on BetRivers there as well, but consensus 31.5 right now. But we take a look at this Jaguars team. They've also been a team that has been decimated at the wide receiver position, right? Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. So it's pretty much Brian Thomas Jr., it's Parker Washington, it's Evan Ingram. And obviously this week they have Mac Jones as going to be the starting quarterback for this Jacksonville Jaguars team after Trevor Lawrence was put on the IR and shut down for pretty much the remaining of the season here. But when Mac Jones did come into the game last week against the Texans, he was finding Parker Washington a lot in that game. And I think that's something that's going to continue this week for Mac Jones and the offense here of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Take a look last week, what he was able to do. 12 targets in that game for Parker Washington, 6 receptions, 103 yards, 1 touchdown. But even go back prior to that, 3 out of the last 4 games, he has gone up and over this number of 30.5. He had 46 receiving yards against the Packers, 41 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I mentioned, what he was able to do last week against the Houston Texans. So, going on the road here in a division game, I don't think they'll be able to do a lot in the running game here. But I do think that Mac Jones will probably seize this opportunity, maybe use this remaining of the season as a trial to maybe land a starting quarterback position elsewhere. But I think that Parker Washington will continue to see the targets in this game here. So I do like him up and over the number of 30.5 here, Chris, for Parker Washington.
Yeah, I love this. This was actually one that was on my short list as well. So I'm glad that I don't know if I'm gonna get to the window with this one, but you're convincing me. You're definitely convincing me here. Just the projection is too low, like you mentioned. I think the big thing here is set this low because you have a backup quarterback now. But as you mentioned, the opportunity is going to be there. Like, this is a very depleted wide receiving room, So I like it. And then, I mean, it's not like you got this struggling, this really strong pass defense on the opposite side. Did we see what Scary Terry did to this defense last week, all within one half of a football game? So, the opportunities will be there. I think this number is super low. I think this actually get bought up. So if you want to get in, I do think the best time to do so is now, before this one becomes too public of a play. But I love it. Love the line here.
All right, so that's 3 player props each for myself and Chris. Before we do get into honorable mentions here for the Week 14 card, let me tell everyone about MyBookie.ag. We're brought to you by MyBookie.ag. MyBookie has been running on SGPN for years. Check out their new and improved website, great on mobile, plus props for every game and the live dealer casino as well. They even have a new early cash out option. Head over to mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip as well. That's mybookie.ag. Make sure you use that promo code SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's Pro Partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predicted betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models, or have Rhythm build a model for you. NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball, NBA, Rhythm. Honestly, they have it all. And this week, they do like Matthew Stafford to go under his passing yards in this game of 253.5. They're projecting that he only has 235 in this game against the Buffalo Bills there. So get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, Chris, let's get into honorable mentions here for the Week 14 card. Anything that's also on your list here that you're trying to get to the window to?
How many rushing yards does Mr. One Saquon Barkley have against the Carolina Panthers this week?
Do you remember the last time where we've seen a running back prop's yardage be this high?
I'm pretty sure it's Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure me and you both had the same analysis around it's high for a reason. Just go ahead and take it. Is there hesitation here,
Yeah. What's the case that you don't like? If I gave you $100, I said, Chris, go bet this. Are you more than likely taking the over or are you taking the under?
I'm taking the over, and it's not even going to be close. Let's think about, just take a step back. Like, we know how bad the defense has been for Carolina. They give up all the rushing yards, blah, 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 blah. We know that Saquon has been absolutely elite, 1,500 rushing yards already. Let's think about grand scheme, If you're the Eagles, you're a heavy favorite, of course. He's averaging 23 carries over his last 6 games. So the volume is, should be there. We haven't seen a running back win the MVP award in a really, really long time. These odds for Saquon continue to get smaller and smaller. Yep. Is this not like the cherry on top? Let's punch the gas. We're moving, We're not going 45 miles per hour. We're already doing 65, right? Mm-hmm. But isn't this the perfect time to punch the floor? And let's see if we can do the whole dashboard. Let's get to 120, right? Let's go ahead and why not let this be the the game that he when people look back and they say, oh yeah, you remember that year Saquon won MVP? Yeah, remember he had 225 rushing yards against the Panthers that week. That's the way I kind of see it, So Saquon is, of course, has to be on the honorable mention. I feel like outside of him, wasn't really looking at too many more. You mentioned Alvin Kamara. Love him. Love Alvin Kamara. Parker Washington, you mentioned as well. I also consider the same game, just A.J. Brown. I thought that number was a tad bit too low. Yeah. 76.5 receiving yards. Super dominant wide receiver. He's over in 6 of the last 10. Probably projected to get 80, 85. It wouldn't surprise me if he went up and over that number. Maybe a longest completion, longest reception for him instead. Just because we know that the Carolina Panthers can give up big explosive plays, and the Eagles are more than capable of putting together some really big explosive plays as well. So didn't quite get there on either one of those. And like I mentioned, I like Parker Washington. I also like Alvin Kamara this week, So I'll just give you those two, I guess, and I'll throw it back to you, get your analysis on those, and hand it off to you so you can talk about what you're thinking about getting to the window with as well.
Yeah, I mean, you took a look at what Bucky Irving did last week against the Carolina Panthers. 25 attempts, 152 yards on the ground, and
looked like Barry Sanders.
Honestly, and just imagine what Saquon's going to be able to do in this game. I mean, a few weeks ago, Tyrone Tracy Jr., 18 attempts, 103 rushing yards in that game. Alvin Kamara, 29, 155. I mean, do we see another 200-yard game here from Saquon Barkley is honestly the question in this game here. And again, it would be the over for me in this game. If you want to take a look at his longest rush attempt to go over as well for Saquon, couldn't talk you off of that. But right now we're looking at Saquon, who has right around 1,500 rushing yards on the season. He's at 1,499 to be exact, with 5 games to go here. And I think that if he wants to get to 2,000 rushing yards, like this is the game where you, like you mentioned, you go full speed ahead and try to get as close as you can to 2,000 in this game against the Carolina Panthers here. So, yeah, I wouldn't be able to talk you off of that for Saquon in this game. Mentioned AJ Brown. I think that's another good angle here. I believe you were on him last week as well. So AJ Brown, really number one healthy, finding a stride here. A game where they are a 12-point favorite. I think that maybe he gets this one done early. But I think this is an opportunity for AJ Brown to have a big week as well. Brock Bowers is one I am going to be on. This number opened up at 66.5. It's up to 73.5 at some spots for him. He's going up against the Bucks this week. Bucks talked about a lot how bad their defense has been against the tight end position, and Brock Bowers has just absolutely been a monster this season. And building off of what he did last week against the Miami Dolphins, 140 receiving yards in that game, 10 receptions, 14 targets. Go up against the that was against Kansas City last week. I'm sorry, against the Dolphins, he had 126 receiving yards. And you also take a look at what he did against other teams that are really bad against the tight end position. Ravens fit that category, 98 receiving yards in that game. He had 93 against the Rams. So I think it's a good spot here for Brock Bowers up and over his receiving yards. I think that was pretty much it. If you want to go George Pickens, longest reception to go up and over, that one has been a very profitable angle ever since, like we talked about.
Auto bet.
Yeah.
Russell that was before. It was before even Russell, remember?
Yeah. But he's at, I think, 40 plus, or sorry, I should say 31 plus in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. So they do play the Cleveland Browns this week. So they're looking for that revenge, from a couple weeks ago in that snow game, even earlier in Cleveland, I should say. So those are the ones I had on my short list. Chris, I don't know if you have any thoughts on those before we move to touchdown scores.
Not really. Just that I love all of them. I think they all correlate really, really well. Real quick, we got to talk about. You mentioned that, and this is why I love doing the Propcast with you so much. You mentioned Saquon, and I talked about his yards going up and over, and maybe you just you take it and you just alt it, right? Like maybe you just want to get the plus money, you just set them at 125, right? Just avoid the base for smaller unit size, of course. We always talk about that, and maybe you just throw a smaller amount of units on him to get 200 rushing yards. But I think you might be on to something, with this longest rush. I'm looking at the numbers right now. It comes in at 19.5. which feels pretty big, but you look at Saquon's numbers, this is not big at all. I mean, Baltimore is the best rush defense in the NFL. He had a 25-yard rush last week against the Rams a couple weeks ago, 72 yards. Against the Commanders, my Commanders, 39 yards. And he waited to the fourth quarter to do that. This is a number that he's gone up and over in 4 of his last 5 games, in 7 of his last 10 games, in 67% of his games in 2024 this season, So I think I will be putting a little something on Saquon longest rush, because this is the one I don't have to wait the whole game for. Might happen in the first quarter and I'm already paid and I'm gonna say thank you,
It almost feels like he saves those for the fourth quarter as well. I mean, he probably has multiple a game, but at least over the last couple of weeks, it feels like he hits those home runs when they need to either ice the game or put the game away. Like Saquon steps up in those spots when you have a tired defense, and we saw it last week against the Ravens, and the week prior there as well for Saquon. So couldn't talk you off of this, I think we're in agreement about that. All right, Chris, let's get over to touchdown scores for this week here. Who do you like to find the end zone?
So I'll give you a couple guys. We'll start here in this game. I think Saquon was minus 275. So can't touch Saquon. But unless you want to do double or triple. AJ Brown, I feel like just because we know how much of a red zone threat he has been, big target machine, faces a Carolina Panthers defense that's allowing the 4th most passing touchdowns outside of their rush defense being pretty poor. So you can get him a plus money, plus 125 over on FanDuel. I think that's definitely playable. I'll go just based on matchup, not the greatest offense, not the sexiest offense, but Tyrone Tracy Jr., like you mentioned, get him at plus 130 over on DraftKings. He's kind of taken over as the lead back with Singletary in the New York Giants backfield. You got a Saints defense that's 31st in rushing success, and he's averaged 5.4 yards per carry, and been pretty dominant in the red zone as far as running back shares go. So I like him, like AJ Brown. Two more. We'll go TJ Hawkinson, your guy. I feel like you bet on TJ Hawkinson a lot. He's been pretty reliable, I want to say, for Sam Darnold over there. And I also we didn't talk about this. I wrote this one down too. Sam Darnold to have 2 passing touchdowns. I think against that Falcons defense that doesn't have a lot of pass rush, he's also in line. But that's just real quick on him. As far as Hawkinson, plus 210. We always looking for plus money when we take these. Why not? He's been a very reliable red zone target for Sam Darnold, especially with Justin Jefferson drawing a lot of defensive attention. Falcons, one of the weaker pass rushes. They should give Darnold some time to be able to find his wide receivers, and I think TJ can get one as well. How could we not mention Alvin Kamara at plus 175? It feels like we have to. No Taysom Hill, like you said. He's seen increased red zone opportunities. Giants defense allowed the 5th most rushing touchdowns to running back so far this season. So yeah, I guess I'll go those 4, but there's a lot of guys I like to find pay dirt this week. Kenneth Walker, I'll throw Kenneth Walker out there as well. I think he is at plus 100. I like Kenneth Walker. He gets a Cardinals defense that's pretty soft. Despite him, sharing the backfield with Zach Charbonnet, I still think he finds the end zone as well this week at plus 100 against a weaker run defense for the Arizona Cardinals. So Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker at the running back positions, Tyrone Tracy Jr. as well, and then wide receiver tight end we'll go AJ Brown and TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, I like those for those guys to find the end zone. I know the odds are now not as great as what you could have got maybe a few weeks ago, but the Titans and Will Levis with Nick Westbrook-Akine, they're just finding ways for him to score touchdowns. He's at plus 195, plus 200, so definitely shop around. I think he was double those odds a couple weeks ago, so maybe all the value is gone on them, but on him at least. But he's been able to score touchdowns. I mean, same game. I'll stay there. Let's just go back to Parker Washington to find the end zone here, plus 280 for him to find the end zone. So another one I was looking at in that Pratt Farmuth for the Steelers tight end against the Cleveland Browns in that game. I think there's a good opportunity for him to find the end zone here in a revenge spot here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's at around 3-1 for him to find the end zone. And I'll double down on Brock Bowers, plus 170 to find the end zone in this game. And I mentioned that the Bucs have been a team that have struggled against the tight end position. I think it's an opportunity for him to get up and over his yards and also find the end zone here. So I'll leave you with those here for those guys to find the end zone here. So there we go. Touchdown scores for this week. All right, let's get into best bets here, Chris. And then we'll put together our Underdog Fantasy entry here for week 14 here. I'll let you lead off. Best bet. What do you got?
We're going to an under. We love the unders. And we didn't cash one yesterday. We did not. Tim Laporta owes us. Probably going to double back to him next week and go back to that under 3.5. But we'll go Jalen Hurts. I just really don't think this is a game where he's going to have to pass the ball 26 times. So, big favorites. Really poor rush defense. I just don't see a world where he has to. Like I said, I gave the numbers out. He's under this number in a lot. Let's just say a lot of his last few games. So hand that thing off, turn it around, hand it off, control the clock, eat and chew the clock up, get out to a big lead. Don't have to pass the ball anyway. So we'll go Jalen Hurts under his 25.5 pass attempts. Love it. Icing on the cake was plus money. So never talk off plus money.
All right. Yeah, love it, man. I know Chris loves the unders, so I definitely will be rooting for you on this for sure. For my best bet, I really do like Aiden O'Connell. I think it's Alvin Kamara this week. We just got to continue fitting that Giants rush defense. I'll give out the consensus number 82.5. There is a 79.5 out there, but I think come game time, I wouldn't be surprised if this number is north of 85.5, Chris, for Alvin Kamara. I think this is going to be a game, I think, where he does get into triple digits here as well. So I think I might put together a little parlay of Saquon 150 plus and Alvin Kamara 150 plus and see what ends up happening in those games. But I mean, I mentioned it, the other running backs that have had a lot of success against the New York Giants rush defense or lack thereof. I think Alvin Kamara really only being the consistent weapon on the offensive side for this New Orleans Saints team. I think that will propel him to have a really big game here. I know the snap counts will be there. The usage will be there for him as well. So we'll go up and over 82.5 is the number for Alvin Kamara on his rushing yards to go over against the New York Football Giants. All right, last but not least, let's quickly put together our Underdog Fantasy entry for the Sunday games here in the NFL. So I'll put together our entry with first two entries being the bets that we just gave out with our favorite plays, which will be Jalen Hurts, correct, Chris, for you on the under on his attempts. We'll go lower on Jalen Hurts attempts.
Yes, sir.
For this week. Let me see. I have to scroll down a little bit here. Where are his attempts? Yeah, so we'll go lower on that. Let me go to Mr. Alvin Kamara. And what I will do is I'm going to adjust this number. It's at 81.5, but I'm going to go up to, just so we get some nice juicy odds. Why is that only? All right, I'll just keep it at 81.5 for his yards, rushing yards to go higher, 81.5 yards. And then I think we both agreed on Parker Washington, Chris. I'll throw that in there.
We did.
Yeah, so his number's at 31.5 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll go higher on that. And that will get us a 5.5x entry of every $10 that you put in. $55.80 will be the return if all three of those, in fact, do end up winning for our entry this week. So just to recap, Jalen Hurts, lower 26.5 pass attempts. Alvin Kamara, higher 81.5 rushing yards. And we'll go Parker Washington, higher 31.5 receiving yards. Again, 5.58x entry over on Underdog Fantasy. Again, just come join the fun, underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code Machine over on Underdog Fantasy. You'll get a 50% deposit bonus for new account users of up to $1,000. And that, my friends, will do it here for this edition of the Propcast. Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Not at all. Just enjoy the games as always. Bet responsibly, and we appreciate everybody for tuning in and supporting the channel.
Yeah, we'll be back next week for the player props, NBA and NFL, of course. Don't forget, we do also do a live show on Sunday mornings, just rapid firing through our player props with myself and Lante on Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to, come jump in, get your last minute player props, we do that every single Sunday. So it's always a lot of fun. All right, we'll be back next week. Like I mentioned, make sure you guys follow Chris over on the Twitter machine at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, if you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast YouTube channel, please go in and do so. And if you can do us a huge favor, leave us a rating and review over on Spotify or Apple, wherever you do get your podcasts audio format for the Propcast. All right, good luck with your bets this weekend. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you guys down the road.